This guy is one of those cool dudes. And if you guys haven't read Jason's book, One to Many, it's all about selling through webinars.
It's an honor. I love to help and see if I can, spit some game and some knowledge to some folks.
They click the link, they click the offer, they watch the presentation, they watch you handle questions. A lot of times they say, oh, that's a tire kicker, but they're not sticking around 99% of the way because they don't want to buy.
Here's what most people will say in our markets. It's like people don't take action, they're lazy, they procrastinate, and they throw out these very impersonal descriptions on marketplaces, and then they lose empathy and connection with that marketplace.
If you sell, you're going to have more leads and more sales and more customers tomorrow, which is what most people sell.
Most people don't know how to do them, and they're not willing to learn how to do them.
All right. What up, my amazing, sexy, attractive, cool ass motherfuckers in the agency world? We got today a living legend, I think. We've had some really awesome people. We had Jay Abraham on the show. We've had Perry Marshall. We've had Onyx Singal. This guy is one of those cool dudes. And if you guys haven't read Jason's book, One to Many, it's all about selling through webinars. I would say there's very few books that are written out there where you can directly just make money just doing what the book says. Jason has some back end stuff like, done for you programs, things like that. But you can like literally just read this book, do what he says, and put together cash in the bank. So if you guys haven't already seen that, I would suggest you check it out. Jason doesn't know this, but I think you came up on my radar like 10, 11, 12 years ago. You had a fulfilled by Amazon. You were much more obnoxious internet bro. You had a bigger beard, but you were still kicking ass with webinars back in the day. I was not an e-commerce guy, so I was more just impressed with your webinar structure. But I want to say, firstly, thank you for coming on here and doing this, my man.
It's an honor. I love to help and see if I can, spit some game and some knowledge to some folks.
Yeah. So a lot of folks don't know this, but a lot of what's in Alex Hermosi's $100 million offers is big inspiration from you, private conversations you've had, stuff you've helped him with. I think it's become more common knowledge in the last 3 years that like offers are the game. In fact, I remember personally there was like a 5-year period where I would go to like whatever mastermind or whatever I was in or conference or whatever. I would ask the most successful person, how do you do it? And they would always tell me it was the offer, but nobody could tell me how they actually came up with those offers. It was like I knew it was the offer, it was the linchpin piece. I would love to hear for you just, a super basic but easy to understand definition of what an offer is, because I think especially in our agency world, a lot of people think their deliverable is their offer. I do SEO, I do Facebook ads, I do web design. That's my offer. And no, it's not. But I would love to hear just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, you have time, you have money, and you have energy. And those are the three things that you invest, both on the seller side and on the buyer side. So the seller wants to spend the least amount of time, money, and effort to make the most amount of time. They want to sell the most product with the least amount of effort. And the buyer, they want to spend the least amount of money in the least amount of time and the least amount of effort. So it's funny because they're somewhat adversarial. Where we meet in the middle is a buyer or a seller gets very creative. How can I manifest $1 million worth of value and sell it for $10? Now I have an offer that to the market, it's overvalued compared to the price that we put into it. But you see, here's a crazy thing, Frankie. The price is the least important part of an offer.
Yeah.
If I show you how to get from New York to LA and the answer is walk, because you don't have to buy a plane ticket, nobody's going to do that. First of all, you spend too much time and pain. That's the effort part of it. Second of all, it ends up costing you more money because then you stop in the hotel rooms, you buy new shoes, right? You eat at places you wouldn't normally eat at. And so usually saving the money is the least effective way that you can construct an offer. More effective is if you save people time than money. The most effective part about an offer, and this is what people don't get, is the energetic force that is required to get the value from the offer. So, Frankie, you would have to pay me a lot of money for me to want to hang out in a spreadsheet for an hour. Like, I mean,
I second that. I feel you on that
you would
one.
have to pay me a hell. So my rate for consulting is $3,500 an hour, and I enjoy it. And by the way, that price is too low, but I can make that a deal because it's so fun for me. So the energetic force that is required to deliver that value to the clientele that I deliver it to is minimal. But if it was an hour of me teaching spreadsheets, I'd have to charge $50,000 for the hour because the energy that I'd have to psych myself up to show up in a way that I could justify it, the cost would be too high, right? So a lot of people, when they sell offers, they do not take into account the effort the buyer has to put in order to get the value. And
Mhm.
that's the first thing that we start at with an offer. We try to have the buyer spend the least amount of effort and time in order to get the result that they want. And the better we do that, A, the more we can charge, which is great, but B, the more they're happy to pay it. Because what we're trying to do here is make the cost of not buying higher than the cost of buying. And that's where we start at with the offer. So that's very high level. We have formulas, structures, components. We can do deep dive analysis into any and all of those areas. But I think where people miss the boat from the beginning, Frankie, is I don't care what you sell the thing for. If I have to work really hard to extract the value out of it, it's not a good deal for me. And this is why people that try to give away free trials of software realize that it's impossible because it's not the software. Then I have to learn it as a user. I have to understand the interface.
Yeah.
I have to start from scratch and build my way up and just
Yeah.
consider that for every offer that anybody does. And then you can oftentimes see the problem with a lot of these offers is it's not the price and it's not even the time, it's the effort involved to get the value out of it.
Yeah, I love that you said that because I feel like in our space in particular, a lot of the offers are like are what I call the undefined more. So just like more leads, more sales, and more customers. And usually, if you're a beginner internet marketer and you're just trying to make those first couple of sales consistently, that sounds very appealing to you because you're very money focused. But to say you're talking to a plumbing guy who's got a crew of 40 guys in 3 locations and already has too much work, what he
Yep.
wants is less, right? He doesn't want, like, he's already juggling 20 plates too many. And so I love that you brought up this energetic component. I wonder if we could just do a little deeper dive there because I feel like
Yep.
the money part is the most obvious thing to people, but the least obvious part is the one you mentioned is the energy. Like, how do
Yeah.
you actually make it easier for them to do it? Where, like you said, it almost makes more sense for them. Like, it's almost stupid for them not to pay you because it's just easier to get you to do it. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, like, because you've done this not just in like your own offers or one or two industries. You've done like 80 bazillion webinars for all kinds
Yeah.
of people selling coaching, expertise in all its packages. I wonder if you could talk
Yep.
a little bit about where you start with that kind of energetic piece, which I feel like is the hidden piece that like not enough people kind of just easily identify.
Yeah, it starts with risk. You ever heard this saying that if you knew you could do anything and you would never fail, then what would you do? Like it's a very common personal development, often used in woo-woo settings. It's very powerful. Or the other version of that is if you could wave a magic wand and already have the result, what result would you wish for? These are great thought experiments because oftentimes people will censor themselves from what they really want because as soon as they dream about the outcome, they find ways in which it can't work. And your prospects are exactly that. What we need to do is eliminate the risk of failure. Now, so here's a crazy little thought experiment, Frankie. I don't play the lottery because I don't like the odds.
Yeah.
Uh, they're like 1 billion to 1 or whatever the
Yeah,
case
I
may
don't think
be.
very many entrepreneurs are investing in the I'll win the lottery as the life wealth plan anyway.
Yeah, so let's say the jackpot is $1 billion. I wouldn't play the lottery even then because the odds were not good. If you said, Jason, I'll increase the jackpot to 10 billion, would you play? I said no. They said, Jason, I'll increase it to infinity. Would you play? And I would say no because the odds suck, right? Now,
Yeah.
here's what's crazy, Frankie. If you say, listen, a ticket costs $1. If you win, you only get $1.01 back. That's your upside. Not a billion anymore, 1 penny upside. But your odds are 51%. Jason, would you now play the lottery? Not only would I play the lottery, I would build a machine that could buy tickets for me so I can play the lottery a million times a day. Now,
Yeah.
I've eliminated 99.9% plus of the upside, but I've completely eliminated the downside.
Mhm.
And that more than anything is what makes an offer incredible. It's not that we increase the potential gain, it's that we decrease the risk of failure, the risk of looking like an idiot, the risk of embarrassment, the risk of shame, the risk of reinforcing some sort of impoverished identity and feeling that somebody has about themselves or about their life. So when we start looking at an offer, that's the most powerful energetic force, by the way, is that. So we say, how can we remove the biggest excuse that would stop somebody from buying this thing? And that's where we go to war. We attack that. We try to figure that out. How do we eliminate as much of the downside as possible? And I'm willing to get rid of a ton of the upside if we can get rid of even more of the downside. And that's very different than how most people do offer shrinking because they're focused so much on the addition,
Yeah.
not on the subtraction. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a mentor once, just a funny little story about that, but I mean, he's still my mentor, but he was talking about it. There's a lion sitting on the savannah and has a thorn in its paw. What most people are doing metaphorically is saying, buy my offer because you're going to run around the savannah. Life's going to be amazing. You're going to eat the finest zebra meat. You're going to get all the lioness pussy you can possibly handle. But really what he needs is certainty that you can actually pull the thorn out today and that you have some sort of process to do that. And he doesn't need a promise of like, and what most marketers do is go 5 lionesses, 20 lioness, 100 lioness.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
Yeah.
really change the now part of it. Wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the tools you use to kind of minimize that risk of downside of failure, because as we know, especially in our case, because we're dealing with a lot of internet marketers, ADD, ADHD, whatever you want to call it, people like rarely follow through. There's low follow through on ideas. Unlike plumbing, where you're going to be a plumber 30 years from now, like we have a new AI tool or whatever that's coming out every 5 minutes. What are some of the kind of like, as you had mentioned in a video I watched, some like done for you pieces and things like
Yeah.
that. But you do almost like kind of drag somebody kicking and screaming to the finish line, because you almost have to think about it like, how can I make it so they succeed even despite themselves?
Correct. I mean, that's a good attitude to have because that's you going against their limiting beliefs. But, there's two ways you do it. There's hard risk and then there's soft risk. So hard risk would be a better than money back guarantee, or a certain ridiculous guarantee that is not seen in the industry. And that's where we usually will start. You can't always do that, but that's where we start. We say, if we can put the right conditions and boundaries around what we promise, meaning that if you do X, Y, Z, 1, 2, and 3 and don't get the result, then we will compensate you for your time. Those are the greatest offers ever. So if I can get that like constructed from a guarantee perspective, then the pitch is simple. If you win, then you win. If you lose, then you win. Yeah, that's an easy pitch. I mean, then you have to just get them to make believe that you actually can do what you say and that your promise is legitimate. So you got to build trust and rapport, which is essential to all sales anyway. But the idea here is if you can ask them to do what you feel is a reasonable and fair thing that they would do anyway if they were a good client, and if they do that and it doesn't work, then you will compensate them for their time. People will respond very favorably to that. And I love those pitches, Frankie, because like we can't control the weather. So some people, when they go outside without an umbrella, it's going to rain. So there is variance. And so this guarantee protects them, because then I can say, listen, if you're the unluckiest SOB who's ever existed, if you flip a coin and you call it heads and it lands tail 50 times in a row, that's very unlikely. But it's possible in the land of probability. So even you, the unluckiest son of a bitch who's ever walked this earth, even you, I can guarantee success. All you got to do is show up. You just got to do the bare basics. And if you do that and it doesn't work your way, I'll compensate you for being unlucky. It's as simple as that. And people have they've never seen a pitch like that, which is what makes it good. And B, it's logical. They're like, okay, as long as the conditions are fine, I'll try it out. And if you look at really strong service-based offers, they will usually guarantee their work above and beyond. They'll say, hey, if you're this type of client and you give me this and you submit this and you follow this thing and you don't see this result, then this is how we will take care of you. Not only will we make it free or whatever the case may be, we will also do these things on top of that. And they say, whoa, I've never seen an offer like that before. So it gets their attention. And they also say, wow, they are probably pretty good at what they do if they're that willing to back it up and put their own money on the line, not just my money on the line.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if we could switch gears here for
Yeah.
probably the last 10 minutes. So obviously, you're known as the webinar guy, and a lot of our folks are selling their services through webinar. I feel like your one-to-many presentation really works anywhere. I mean, you could do the same kind of
Yeah.
presentation style in a in a podcast, you could do it in a YouTube video, you could do it in a face-to-face conversation, you could speak from stage and do it. But let's talk about some of the things I don't think enough people think about, which is I feel like most offers need, especially in the age of how much competing information there is, they need more repetition and more objection handling than most people think. And
Yep.
I've seen some stuff where you said, I'll stay on a webinar 4 or 5 hours answering questions about an offer when most people are like 30 minutes auto webinar, buy, move on with life.
Yep.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your mindset in and kind of the strategy of what you're doing when you're standing there for 3 4 hours answering questions and like handling every what if scenario around the offer that one could possibly imagine.
Yeah, it's pretty fun actually. I don't know. I enjoy it. But once upon a time, way back in the day, when I didn't make a lot of money, but I made okay money. I was on a webinar once and we had about 50 people on the webinar after I ran out of slides. So I did my whole song and dance, pitch it. Here's the offer. Here's what it is. Go here and sign up for it. And people were still there. I'm like, okay, well, you're still typing in stuff into the chat. So I thought in my mind, if I could sell just one person in the next hour, I would make 500 bucks because I was selling a $500 offer. And I thought 500 bucks an hour, that's not bad. I'd work for 500 bucks an hour. So I did. And I sold two. So I actually made $1,000 an hour. I thought, awesome. I just found a hack. I can make 1,000 bucks an hour. I'm not doing one-to-one selling, but there was like only 7 people that were chatting with me. So I'm doing 1 to 7 selling. And I thought, what the hell? There's still 6 people left now. Hour number 2 of this whole just back and forth. There was no more slides or anything. Could I sell another one? And I did. Now, hour number 3, I didn't sell anybody. So, but if you factor that out, I made 3 sales for 3 hours of effort, and that was 500 bucks an hour. So in 2008 or 2009, whenever that was a lot of money for me. I was pretty happy about it. I thought that's all I have to do. So for the next year, that's all I did. I would just stay on webinars for an extra 2 or 3 hours, and as long as there was a chat and as long as people were chatting in it, I would try whatever I could. I was just thinking straight up, let's just make some money. What I didn't realize, Frankie, was that I was learning things that would become so much more valuable than just the sales that I closed.
Yeah.
I was learning different techniques. And then when I ran out of techniques that I learned from other people, I invented new techniques out of sheer boredom. I mean, I got 2, 3, 4 hours to kill. What am I going to do? So, I started just trying new things because I ran out of other stuff. And those were the biggest breakthroughs. So all the stuff guys like Hormozy and Brunson and those guys, Russell Brunson, get from me today were the result of being an hour 3 or hour 4 into a webinar experimenting like a mad scientist. I also learned things about the offer during those objections because I'm like, oh, how do I stop this objection from occurring in the first place? Well, maybe if I made this bonus over here, then when somebody said, "Hey, what about this?" I would just say, "Look at that bonus. That's for you. I created that just for you." And they go, "Okay, that could work somewhat." But I really understood how people make decisions. And here's the other thing too, Frank, and I didn't understand this at the time, but I understand this now. It didn't really matter what objection technique I used. What mattered was my audience saw me stay longer than everybody else that was trying to get their money. And they thought, if I'm going to bet on anybody that can help me, I'm going to bet on the guy that will hang in there with me longer, try to help me longer than anybody else. So I actually picked up a majority of my sales based on me showing, not telling, but showing that I cared for my audience. You can't fake that. Now, here's the good news. Zoom doesn't charge you by the minute. PowerPoint doesn't charge you by the slide. This is free time. It only takes your effort and your energy. So as long as the output is greater than the input, it's a good deal. And so I think people just give up too early because they're used to the old days where you only had a set amount of time and you had to show up and you left. Or people are thinking it's TikTok brain these days and people don't have the attention span. It's like, I got millions of dollars of reasons that prove the opposite of the case of that. But yeah, just hang in there with your audience. By the way, most people won't tell you their deepest secret until hour 3 or 4. Pretty soon they're
That's a
spilling their whole
fact, by
guts
the
to you.
way.
Yeah, that's when you really reach them, when they let down all of their shields and say, okay, fine, here's the real problem. And then you understand more about a market than anybody does. So there's no downside to it. The worst case scenario is you learn something, but damn, I have moved many markets just by being like an old encyclopedia salesman who would knock on the door, and until that family kicked him out of the house, he was going to use every damn clothes that he possibly could to sell them a set of encyclopedias.
I like that. Yeah, I think it's an 80-20 question too, which you mentioned if you really want to help people, which is you asked, how can I eliminate that objection before it even comes up? And I
Yeah.
feel like too many people think that, kind of selling is all based on, having some perfect magic line to counter people's objections. But as you put it, like I actually make real changes to my offer so that like you said, that bonus is there just because, like maybe it's like, okay, I see how I can sell stuff on Amazon, but how do I get traffic? Well, that's why we have a traffic
Yep.
bonus just for that one thing. I wonder if you could share just a little bit about like what are some of the kind of deep insights? Because I've experienced the same thing with
Yeah.
my own audiences where people have told me like shit where like now I can't even like let my wife see my phone because people have shared their inner darkest secrets with me. And I'm like, I don't think they want anybody else knowing that. But you're absolutely right. Is like, on the surface level, when you're talking about the offer and the price, that doesn't happen. It's on hour three and I don't think enough people understand too that, somebody who's been with you 3 hours, they click the link, they click the offer, they watch the presentation, they watch you handle questions. A lot of times they say, oh, that's a tire kicker, but they're not sticking around 99% of the way because they don't want to buy. It's that last
Yep.
minute kind of shady. I don't really want to talk about, but I maxed out my credit card. My wife's pissed off at me. And if I buy one more damn course and it doesn't work, she's going to fucking hang me upside down. It's that kind of shit that comes out on
Usually
our.
that's not even the worst of it, Frankie. Like to me, those are pretty superficial, right? I get into things like, God, I'll never forget this. There was this woman on my webinar one time, and she says, "Hey, listen, I was in this abusive relationship with my ex, and when I left him, he stalked me everywhere I went. He would find me, threaten my life. Finally, I got into a woman's shelter. I was able to get away from him. It's been 9 months. I'm now on my own, and I wonder if it's too soon for me to go out there and try something new." And she was confiding in me, very scared, being very vulnerable. Like, I
Yeah.
want to do this, but is it irresponsible of me because of what I went through, the trauma that I suffered? And that really left an impression on me. Because here's what most people will say in our markets: it's like people don't take action, they're lazy, they procrastinate, and they throw out these very impersonal descriptions on marketplaces, and then they lose empathy and connection with that marketplace. It's like if you told that woman you're lazy, you've lost her as a sale. You've lost her because she's not lazy. She's went through an unbelievably challenging experience, and yet here she still is hanging in there looking to see what she can do for herself. What she needs to know is what she needs is to feel safe moving forward. And so
Yeah.
you have to either communicate and provide that for her, or you can't help her, right? And that's a tough one. Here's another one that I learned, and then I could tell you 150 more of them. But another one is a couple was on a call one day on a webinar, and they said, "Hey, listen, we just put her father into a nursing home. He no longer remembers who she is 3 out of 5 days. And it's been very tough on us. And we have children too, and we already have our job, which pays well, but not enough. Is this too much? Are we taking on too much?" And that, gosh, it really puts things in a whole different light. It helps me understand the market better. It's like, oh, I need to design offers with these things at least in my peripheral. I need to be at least open to the idea that I'm not the only one that's giving them homework.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I fit into these things that are very stressful to them? So I'll give you a great example. People say this all the time and nobody gets it. They say you need to write at a fifth grade level if you're writing sales copy or if you're communicating or writing a
Yeah.
book. And people immediately hear that and say, oh, that's because people are fucking stupid, right? Like, or they're overwhelmed by so many stresses in their life that the effort required to decode your imprecise language is too much for them. So
Yeah.
make it so it's not too much for them and help them, or act like you're better than them and not help them and not get the money, right? So it's like once I see these things, then I can understand them. I also understand accountability, though, too. I've seen so many people try to wiggle out of a good idea that was perfectly suited for them, and it would frustrate me. And I'd say, why would this person not say yes when I couldn't think of a better person to sell this to? Like, I've sold this thing to 6,000 people, and you're the one I had in mind when I created it, but for some reason, they all bought and you didn't. And then I see why. And the answer is, and this is an interesting insight, is people are typically more afraid of success than they are of failure.
Absolutely.
Um, and I one day I wasn't even thinking, I was just using this close, and I said this to a guy on a call. I said, "Listen, you know failure. I'm like, you do it every single day. Everything you've tried up until this point is a failure. So you might not like it, but you're familiar with it. So, hey, you're okay. You can expect it. You can anticipate it. So it's comfortable to you. But success, you have no idea what that's like. You don't have the first clue. And because it's unknown to you, it's scary. Because you don't understand it, you fear it. So is it failure that's stopping you from saying yes today, or is it success? And later on, I thought about it, Frank. I'm like, I just told this guy he was a failure his whole life, right? But like at the moment, you weren't thinking that far.
Yeah.
What you were thinking is you sensed a hesitation, or at least I did in this person. And this hesitation was he was afraid of both fear of success and failure. I learned this in the weight loss market, right? If you take a woman and say you're going to lose all this weight, she's afraid that this diet's not going to work and she's going to be an embarrassment to her family who are going to tell her, I told you so, that kind of stuff. But she's also afraid it will work. And maybe she'll get unwanted advances from men that she doesn't know how to handle. And a lot of women emotionally use their weight as a shield with the world. Emotionally, they're wounded, but physically, at least it puts distance between them
Yeah.
and another person. It acts as a proxy, right? And so a person in that state is simultaneously afraid of both things. And if you don't understand that deeper level of psychology in the audience, you're only going to get the 10% that will say yes. Markets, in every market, there's 10% of people who will buy if you just make a reasonably decent offer. There's 10% of people who will never buy. You could give them the moon and they'd want the stars also, right? Like you could give them $1 million check and they would complain about the taxes they'd have to pay on it, so they
Yeah.
wouldn't cash it, right? Like, so 10% will never buy. 10% will always buy if you reach them. So you're just skimming off the top. Maybe you get them first. If you get them first, congratulations, you get their sales. If you get them second, then you're broke. But markets are made on the 80% that could go either way. That under the right conditions and circumstances and communication, they will say yes. So they say yes if dot dot dot. And that's where markets get made. That's where records get broke. I have a couple of those records myself. And that's where we try to aim for it. And those are where the markets are moved, is when we can understand these finer points of consumer psychology. That person's afraid of everything that's going to happen to them. And until we can untangle that and build it back up, we're not going to sell them. And more important to me, Frankie, we're not going to help them. Because
Yeah.
even if by some miracle we get them to say yes temporarily, later on when the reality kicks in, they're going to go right back into who they were before they bought the product, which isn't the person they need to be to get success from that product. So these are some of the insights that one learns after doing this for a few thousand hours.
Yeah. And I can say, just as somebody who's done, thousands of sales calls, there comes a point where you can almost tell them what they're going to say before they say
Yeah.
it. It's like it becomes so obvious. I want to ask you just because I want to be super respectful of your time, but I'd love to keep you another 10 minutes if we can.
Yeah, easily. We can go 10, no problem.
Okay, cool. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit, something probably now the superficial piece that everybody's probably interested in is you sell a lot of shit with webinars. For those who haven't read your book or aren't familiar with your work, let's talk about like structure of that. Because to me, a webinar is a well-crafted, content presentation that's really leading somebody into an offer and introducing sort of a new mechanism, idea, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
But how does one like go about, besides just straight up buying your book? Which I'm going to tell them to do at the end. But how did you get really into this, like creating webinars that kind of kicked ass, and what do you look
Yep.
for in like putting these presentations together?
Yeah, I mean, a webinar does one of two things. It either makes the sell or moves the sell forward. So, in a service-based industry, most of the time I have clients book calls at the ends of webinars. That's how they move the sell forward, especially when you're customizing your offer, or especially when you don't want to work with certain clients. So if you're in the service business, the smartest decision you make is not who you work with, it's who you don't work with.
Yeah.
So webinars can help filter out that. Oftentimes too, the ticket price is so high on some of these services that somebody's got to talk to somebody in person. Like if we're going to hash out a, $50,000 contract, generally you can't send them to a Stripe checkout page in order to make that work. But nonetheless, you either move the sell forward or you make the sell on the spot. So the design of the webinar is a one-to-many conversation. So salespeople should love this and be addicted to doing webinars, because instead of talking to people one at a time and making the same presentation over and over and over again, you can put a bunch of them in a virtual room online and make the same presentation to all of them. And there's very little difference, by the way, between the two of them other than a mentality difference. And usually what'll happen is you got to hook them in. You got to show them why this is relevant to them. You got to bring up their excuses right away and show them how by the end of the presentation, those will no longer be the excuse. And then you got to get them to commit to whatever it is that you're going to show, that if you show them something that's worth their while, that they will act upon it. And that's the introduction of a webinar. So regardless of what we're doing or who we're selling or how we're selling, that's essentially what we do in every single webinar. Then the content, the design of the content is to shift some sort of limiting paradigm in their life. So in consumer markets, typically that paradigm is I'm not good, I'm not capable, I'm not effective. And so therefore I have to shift that paradigm to either say this opportunity doesn't need that, or the paradigm can become, yeah, you actually are with the right set of tools. Or, there's a couple other flavors that go into that.
Right.
And that's a good pitch for a consumer market. For like a business market, it's more, hey, these are the things that are costing you. Here's how we stop those costs. And that's where the content comes in place. Because fear of loss, by the way, is more of a motivator than gain. And I like to think of, in business markets, a boat with a hole in it that's water's coming into it, right? We got to plug those leaks. And so love working with businesses, because every day that they're doing the wrong decision, every day they keep a wrong employee costs them twice. Every day that they're misallocating their ad spend is a day they're getting poorer while working at the same time. Doing nothing would be preferable than what they're doing. So in business markets, we show them how to stop how they're losing. And in consumer markets, we give them new reasons to win where they think before they couldn't win. And that's the whole content structure. Now, there's a lot of nuance to that and a lot of cool little techniques I can teach. But at the end of the day, here's the mistake most people make with webinars, Frankie, especially in the content portion, is they want to inform and I want to transform. I don't want to show people all of the ways to give them insight into how they can solve their problems. I want to make it so they see themselves as successful and then make an offer that is in alignment with that, where they say, oh, yeah, now I can do this. And then I hand them the keys to the car that drives them there. That's what we attempt to do, is to transform them into the person they need to be in order to buy the offer that we're making. And that's the whole
Can I
purpose of
just
the
add on
content.
that point, Jason, that
Yes,
a lot of
please.
times when you overly inform, they actually find it boring and they tune out, even though you're like giving them the answers to their problems.
Very few people want to learn anything. Learning's boring. Now, after they pay you money, it's the exact opposite. Like, especially if you're selling educational products. That person who didn't want to learn a damn thing, once they pay you and they say, I value this thing, now they'll learn as much of that as they humanly possibly can. But most people, they don't want to learn how to build a watch. They want you to tell them what time it is. And that's what we really do on the content portions of our webinars is we give them light switches. We don't teach them how to be electricians. And that's a big mistake that a lot of people misunderstand. And then we've got to transition into whatever the offer is. If the offer is to move the sell forward or make the sell, doesn't matter. We still got to transition. And what I love to do is get them to understand that at this point in time, if I left them, then the only choice they have is to do it on themselves with their own resources and their own capabilities. I mean, and if that was the only choice, great, go for it. But what if there was another choice? What if there was a way we could work together? If it made sense, would you be interested and open to the idea, or should I just leave you on your own in a cold, dark, miserable existence to fumble around and hope and pray that somehow, some way you make it on your own? Or maybe I could offer you something. I don't know. It's up to you. That's not too far from how I actually transition in most instances on a webinar. But we help them see the difference between not investing and investing. And then once they realize that, hey, I should at least consider investing, then we make the offer. If it's a book a call, then it's pretty easy. You gotta show the future in the present. Here's how it works next. When you go to this link, you're going to see this calendar. On this calendar, you're going to be able to click and select a time. Once you click and select a time, this is how you fill out the form. Once you fill out the form, an email will be sent to you. The email will contain this information, yada, yada, yada. By the way, there's 100 other techniques I could teach you, but that one is the easiest and most effective for most people, frankly. Frankie, you just got to bring the future into the present. It's a great sales technique for compliance on booking calls. And if it's, making an offer, then there's a whole science around that too, where you show what they're going to pay for. then you position the price so it looks as attractive as possible. Then you add in the bonuses to increase the value. Then you address the risk, whether it's a guarantee, better than money back guarantee or no guarantee. I do all of those depending on the circumstance. And then you introduce the scarcity, which is the benefit for acting fast and the penalty for not acting fast. And then you can hang out and you can answer objections like we talked about earlier. That is the most efficient way that I could explain webinars.
Yeah. Which is pretty awesome, by the way. Especially, I think one of the most useful things for our audience is the fear of loss. I can tell you, as somebody who sold like a lot of SEO packages, if you sell, you're going to have more leads and more sales and more customers tomorrow, which is what most people sell. You will make
Yep.
far less sales than if you can establish the fact that ABC Restoration is kicking your ass now, and you are losing $100,000 a month to them right now because you're not fixing this. Like, I promise you, if you can bring it into the present, what you said, where you're losing now, will make you far. And in practice, almost
Yep.
everybody does the opposite. I want
They
to
do
ask
the
you.
opposite because addition is easier than subtraction. People
Yeah,
aren't trained to see the invisible. That's not how
right.
eyes work. Eyes see what's in front of them. They don't see what's not in front of them. And that's the same with most people when it comes to selling is they think about adding stuff because that's a visual component. I can understand that I could wrap my head around it. I first think about removing stuff, which is invisible. But that's why we get paid the big bucks, dude, for because we have to abstract.
Yeah.
That's why those skills are so valuable because most people don't know how to do them and they're not willing to learn how to do them.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you one last piece on the mindset side of it, because I don't think enough people really have internalized something that, is just very obvious to me is really selling a service. Like you mentioned, transforming people's lives and really making a difference, coming from a place where you genuinely believe this offer is easily worth 10, 20, 300x what I'm asking. And I think it's really the key to selling anything. Like you mentioned your consulting rate, 3,500 bucks an hour. For a lot of people listening to that, they'd go, "Oh my God, that sounds like a bit." But the
They're
reason you can do
butthole
that is because
puckers.
we're going to get on a call and I'm going to show you how to rock, an extra 100,000 out of a webinar you're already doing. And so to you, it's probably
Yeah.
a
I
steal.
mean, different things are worth different stuff to different people. So I almost never do consulting with anybody who doesn't already have $1 million business. Like,
Yeah.
because if you're just starting, I can give you some good practices, but it's unlikely you'll see an ROI on my $3,500 for a very long ass time. Uh, but if you're making, some of these clients I work with, I had a client the other day does $100 million a month. That's over $1 billion a year, right? I could randomly throw words out of the dictionary and they would probably make 1% more next year because Jason Fladlien said it. I
Yeah.
don't even have to
Yeah.
try, and this client's going to make
Yeah.
a lot of money. Usually it's somewhere in between, but it's in the millions of dollars. So, and this is a great lesson for everybody when it comes to constructing offers is um, to the right audience, a low price is not a good thing. A higher price is preferable. And most people don't cater to the best segments of the market. They cater to everybody in the market, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous because there's 1% of the market that will spend 50% of its money. I mean, I
Yeah.
was just in Monaco last week, Frankie. It was my anniversary. And
Congrats, by
I
the way.
never felt more poor in my life.
Yeah.
And I've
Right.
done reasonably well for myself. And I'm just like, God, I mean, I felt like an imposter there. Like I felt homeless compared to the Monaco money that was around me. And it's just, there's always levels to this. And by the way, you can, a jet salesman doesn't have to own a jet himself in order to sell a $27 million jet, right? You don't have to make as much money as your clients. You just have to help the clients make more money. So there's so many lessons to this that it's just incredible when you think about it. But yeah, different things are worth to different people. So Disney has a fast pass line. You have to pay extra for that. To the busy person whose time is super valuable, he would be pissed off if Disney did not offer him that. He would
Yeah.
go somewhere else. So Disney can make less money and lose a customer, or they can make more money and make a happier customer. Now, here's one thing I want to also talk about, Frankie, that I think is really important. I didn't start there. I started selling $4 ebooks, 6-page ebooks for $4 on the
Yeah.
Warrior
That probably
Forum
felt
once
like
upon a
a
time.
big ask when you first did it, right? You're like,
I
I
was
don't think
scared
anyone.
out of my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my sales pitch was brilliant. I didn't know what I was doing, but fear can be a great clarifier. I said, "Hey, listen, I think I can cut your article writing time in half the first time you try this. I'm only asking 4 measly dollars to prove myself. And hey, if I don't, you can get your $4 back. And then I had like 5 bullet points. Here's what you're going to learn if you buy my product. Bullet 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Go ahead and buy it if you want to. And that was my first pitch. And it worked so good because I was just brutally honest and I sold at a super cheap price. I'm like, essentially, I was saying, hey, listen, if it ain't worth you gambling $4 where you could save, 15 minutes every single time you write an article. And some of these guys are writing 1,000 articles a month or so on and so forth, right? They're like, hell, I'll gamble that because people are buying tabloid magazines at checkouts at supermarkets that say Elvis's baby was impregnated by an alien, right? They're spending $4 on that nonsense. They'll gamble $4 on this. And here's what's cool about it, Frankie. Once the results came in, once I had 168 people tell me, Jason, this was awesome. Thank you so much for this. Then I say, okay, I undercharged. I fucked up, right? So then I increased the price. And now this is going to blow your mind how much I increased it to. I mean, I really went all the way with it.
$6, $7.
$7, baby. Yeah, I increased that bad boy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost 100% price increase, right? And then when people still kept buying, I got really crazy and jumped up to 17. We're talking double digits, right? But the results kept coming in. So I kept trading up. So you should never sell something first that you don't know for sure how valuable it is. But once you see the value of it, then you should increase your price, which will allow you to increase your value more. Because if I got no margin, I can't invest as easily in other deliverables to enhance the offer. I can't make better than money back guarantees. I can't do some of this other stuff. Yeah. But if I have more margin, I have more to invest in a customer. Now, Frankie, here's the thing that in 2025 still blows my mind. People will spend more money with Meta and they'll spend more money with Google to increase their ads, but they won't spend more money with their own customers, which probably has a higher ROI because it would cut your advertising costs down because your increase in conversion would go up.
Yeah, that's a fact. That is a fact, my dude. And I love that you went straight up baller, $17 on the Warrior special offer. That's what I'm going to be laughing about.
I was getting crazy with it.
I hope that there's some amazing. Oh, I know there's going to be some amazing nuggets. By the way, I'm going to give your book a plug, and then you can direct people wherever you want here. But I've sold a lot of shit through webinars myself, and I've done a lot of as well, like stage presentations, especially in the legal space, which are the same kind of one-to-many structures. The first time I read this, I think I had an aha every 3 fucking pages, and that's as somebody who's done this shit. So, like, Jason breaks this down into a level of detail where I think, like it'd be impossible for you to read this book, do something with it, and not make money. I really feel like that. Like if you got anything at all semi worthwhile to your audience, you're gonna just following that will do that. But where else can we learn more about you and the cool stuff you do?
Yeah, Instagram is the place for me right now. I just started. I didn't do social media most of my career, and now I'm realizing that's the next journey for me. So just at Jason Fladlien, hit me up on Instagram if you're there. Follow me. We put a lot of content out on Instagram.
He's got a YouTube channel that I built a bot out of that we were talking about.
Yeah, the YouTube is the other one too. So
we'll link
if you're
those
on
up for you
YouTube,
guys.
get me on YouTube as well.
Well, cool, my dude. We appreciate you coming on here and doing this at an Airbnb in France, having gone to Monaco and being poor and having too many kids running around and having to feed them, which is a struggle I relate to. So appreciate you coming on here and doing this, my man.
Oh, my pleasure, Frankie.
Hey guys, if you like this video, you may also like my best-selling book here, Beyond the Agency Box. It is all about scaling a digital marketing agency while eliminating meetings and phone calls. We actually sell our stuff phoneless. We don't have any client meetings, and we also hire our team entirely without meeting phone calls, which allows us to, like actually kind of live a life. I've laid out the entire blueprint in everything you need to know, getting clients, onboarding, setting expectations, scaling, building a team, you name it. It has been a bestseller on Amazon now for over 5 straight years, but now you can get it even cheaper than you can get it on Amazon. So I can't tell you the exact price because it may change when this video is released, but there should be a link to it below, either in the description of the video or as well as a pinned comment. So if you're interested in that, check out that video and you can get a copy for super cheap.